Most Souls-like try to copy difficulty. Lies of P copied satisfaction instead. That is the real reason its combat feels so addictive. It's not harder than Elden Ring, the bosses are not flashier than in Sekiro, but the addiction comes because every dodge, every parry, every stagger, every weapon choice feels deliberate, precisely balanced. There is actually one weird thing. This shouldn't have happened. A studio making its first Souls-like somehow created combat that I can compare to top games like Sekiro or Bloodborne. Meanwhile, most other Souls-likes feel floaty and unbalanced. So why does Lies of P feel different? Lies of P combat system is built around the idea that every death teaches me something meaningful. It refuses to let me panic roll the way through fights like in Dark Souls. It refuses to let me outlevel bosses like Elden Ring. And it absolutely refuses to reward mindless aggression. I didn't beat bosses because my numbers got bigger. I've beaten them because I've got better. It creates the same emotional payoff that I have in Sekiro. That emotional response that only happens when combat systems create genuine growth. A lot of people think Perfect Guard is the reason the Lies of P combat feels amazing, but it isn't. Or I would say not only. Perfect Guard only works because every other mechanics reinforces it. That is the genius of Lies of P combat system. In Lies of P, Perfect Guard feels woven directly into the DNA of combat. Enemy attack chain, stagger system, weapon durability, rally mechanics and boss pacing all revolve around the idea of controlled aggression. The game wants you standing your ground. While dodging creates relief, parrying creates dominance. That is why the combat feels intense. Every successful Perfect Guard feels like you've interrupted chaos itself. The sound design explodes, sparks fly everywhere, enemy momentum completely stops for a split second. It creates this tiny moment of control inside otherwise overwhelming encounters. And Lies of P game stacks those moments constantly. That is why most bosses in Lies of P are really unforgettable. One of the smartest things Lies of P does is make combat feel personal. And the weapon assembly system is a massive reason for this. Most Souls-like ask you to commit to entire weapons. Lies of P lets you experiment with identities. Handles change movesets, blades change damage profiles. I'm actually engineering my own fighting system with a huge amount of available combinations. That creates emotional attachment. And because the game's encounters are so tightly balanced, experimentation actually matters. This connects directly to another major point – the Lies of P game linearity. Ironically, one of the reasons combat feels so polished is because Lies of P isn't open world. That sounds backwards in the era where every Souls-like wants to become Elden Ring. But the open worlds actually destroy combat balancing, because developers can't predict players' level, progression path or builds. But Lies of P always knows roughly what tools you have access to. That allows enemy encounters to feel handcrafted instead of chaotic. And handcrafted encounters make combat feel cleaner, tighter and more satisfying. Every boss feels intentionally designed around the player's capabilities. No randomness. And the high level, but really important one. This might be the most underrated reason the combat feels addictive. The Lies of P linear structure keeps the pacing focused. No massive empty fields, no endless wandering. Boss fights, atmosphere progression, and combat mastery without interruptions. Lies of P almost never wastes your time. The game moves with confidence. You fight, learn, improve, then you fight something harder. That constant escalation creates addiction, because the brain stays locked into improvement loops. Every encounter feels connected to growing mastery. The checkpoint placement supports this philosophy. Shortcuts are meaningful. Rest points are definitely intelligently spaced, and meanwhile enemy density stays consistent. The result is a combat system that feels incredibly playable. Not just impressive or difficult, but playable. There is a reason why I replayed Lies of P so obsessively. I finished it around 5 times, and spent more time in Lies of P than even in Sekiro. In the end, Lies of P is so addictive because it respects me as a player. Thanks for watching, like, subscribe and stay sharp out there.